without wasting any more time, we might jump straight into it. So we'll start with big old biddy, 93.6, doing well, and it's holding where we want it to hold as well. So we've clearly got the break up above yesterday, and the important thing here, like, it did have a bit of a sell-off, nothing too crazy, but it closed above these closing candles. That's the most important part. We can see in today's candle, it's sort of come back down, and not all the way to test it, but it has come down to test. We'll probably will end up seeing a bit of a correction where it comes back and will wick down to that 90k level, just below the closing candles, and we want to see it snap back up. Nearly hit 95k. My initial target is around that 96.5. That's more of a short-term target, I think, before we maybe see a bit more of this sideways action. We've seen a little bit of sideways here, but it's been in this general up direction. I think we will get a little bit of a downward direction. And that comes, like, I know I've been talking about this wave 5 in Elliott waves, how we're in that wave 5 now. And we'll go into this chart here because it shows it nicely. We'll go out to the weekly. Oh, I've got fibs everywhere here. We might hide some of these so we can see what I'm talking about. Okay, that's a bit better. I'll leave those other ones there for now. I'll let some overlaying. Okay, that's looking cleaner. So we're in this wave 5 here, which is the final wave for the macro cycle. But within this wave 5, you also get mini waves or smaller waves. Sub waves, I think, is the technical name for them. And so we've started one back here when we finished this macro wave 4, and it went on the daily chart. I can see it a bit better. It's this 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, and the 3 is the move that we're still currently in. So when it does find a bit of a top, it's going to have a bit of a correction, and that's going to be the wave 4 of the sub waves. It's not going to be extravagant like what we saw back from March down to the August low. It's going to be much smaller, maybe just a couple of weeks, but we will get that pullback. And something to sort of look for is, all right, how long has this wave 3 been that we're currently in? And so if we go 1, 2, 1, 2, we reached this low on the 10th of October. So we're now around about 6 weeks into this run up. So I'd probably go half of that and say if we were to start pulling back now, we'd be looking at minimum of 3 weeks we're going to be pulling back. If this keeps going up for the next 2 weeks, then that brings us to 8 weeks. Maybe we'll pull back for a month before we then go into the wave 5 of the subwave, and that wave 5 will eventually lead to this peak. So the longer that this sort of moves up is all right. It is okay, but it will mean that when we correct, and it's not going to be a perfect ratio of 2 to 1. It could be 3 to 1. It could be 1 to 1. But the longer that this wave 3 goes up, will typically mean that the wave 4 is going to be a little bit longer too, and probably a bit more sharper as well, because it's going to have a lot more room to pull back. The longer something goes up, the more it can pull back. Before it then gets into that final wave 5, and we'll start seeing these Elliott waves and time cycles all finish at the same time before we start going into a more corrective pattern, or also known as the bear market. that's what I'm sort of playing with here, and where my mind sort of sits with it. I don't think we're going to be getting to 120k, 130k in this current wave three. It is overextended. It's 6 weeks up already. If we look at the 1-2, when did that start? August, and it finished in October, so that's about 2 months. So maybe we do have it's 2 months and 1 week. So maybe there is another couple weeks left to the upside, but I don't know. I doubt it, just purely for how this move has been. It's been very impulsive and very sharp, which is what you expect in a wave three. But when they do move really quick like this, they tend to be shorter in time frame. So I'd be surprised if we got further out than that 2 months and 1 week mark, which, if you're to break it down, probably works out to be about 10 weeks in total. Because you got 4.5 weeks in a month. So I think, we're going to be entering this little corrective phase shortly. So we might not even see 100k. This zone here from around that 95 up to 100, there's a heap of different fibs and fib extension levels that fall into this zone. And then you also have the psychology of 100k. If it doesn't get there and then enters into a correction and gets down to 80, 88k or something like that, it might instill a bit of fear into the market. And people are going to be thinking, oh no, we're not going to get to 100k. There's just too many people selling. Especially if we go sideways and down for 3 weeks or something like that. The first week it might be, oh, we're just having a little pullback by the dip. But by the end of the second week, people are saying, oh, we must be hitting the bear market. And then by that third week, it's okay, I'm going to be selling before it then starts turning back up again. So that's sort of where my mind is at for Bitcoin at the moment. We are coming into the time where it can just sort of blow off top as well. It was earlier on in the year, probably around May or so, I was looking at late 2024, so probably starting in December through to around April, I thought was when we were going to see the top. So we are starting to get into that critical period, but based on just how this action has been going, I don't think we're going to see the top in December. I think it's going to be a little bit later on. If we were to continue up for the rest of this week, and then we chuck, say, 3 weeks of pulling back onto that puts us around Christmas. And then if we were to finish off the wave 5 with 4 to 8 weeks of going up, we could see a top potentially around the end of January, end of Feb. So as we get closer, in my mind, I'm starting to narrow down that window a bit more. I think on this, I've got it marked as the very first week of March, which is that's pretty spot on to what my specific analysis is. But it's always subject to change. Always subject to change, without a doubt. I'd say that once we get to the middle of March, it's likely that we've already seen the top. It's not to say that we have seen the top. I can definitely be wrong. And it's extremely difficult to sort of predict this sort of stuff. But that's what I'm working to anyway. For me, I think it's better to have a plan than no plan at all. Any questions about Biddy so far? Wait, yep, no worries. I can add those two to the list there. All right, moving on, we'll jump into Bitcoin dominance. I think that's maybe going to be the best way to go about it. And I hate looking at this on the daily chart because it doesn't share the entire data range for some reason. All right, so we can see on the Bitcoin dominance chart, putting in higher highs and higher lows, at least so it seems. Um, it is respecting this trend line, which is great to see. Tried to get above it, got rejected. Same thing here. That turned out to be a bit of a double top, or you know, yeah, no, it's a double top. It's not even a lower high there. And then we saw a bit of a sell off from here. Now we're coming back up to test it again. The interesting part with this dominance chart, and I don't have access to it, but there is a paid version where you can get the dominance chart where it excludes stable coins, which I think is quite important. As time goes on, there's more and more money becomes available because the printers go on, etc. So the stable coins really should not be part of this. In my opinion, at least, anyway, it should just be the assets themselves. And when you remove stables from the dominance, this actually has been pulling back quite significantly. This top over here actually was down here. Ignore the percentages on the side, but just as far as market structure goes, it was a clear lower high, and this one over here was a clear lower low. And I'd suspect that this here would be another lower high as well. So from a perspective, when you remove stable coins, it definitely appears that Bitcoin dominance has flipped trend. It's just when you include the stables, you don't really get that picture. So I'm interested to see how this sort of plays out and when we see that change of trend on this chart. But it gives me a sneaky suspicion that we may have started the alt season, if you will, even though it may not feel that way when you're seeing near down 7% or 6% today, etc. And Bitcoin's going up and everything else is going down, with the exceptions of a couple like Sweat. But it's not, alt season isn't the flick of a switch and everything pumps to the moon. It is a gradual thing, and then when you get into those wave threes and wave fives, which is typically at the halfway point and towards the end, that's when you start getting those big pumps. That's not to say we haven't seen big pumps. I mean, XRP, ADA, Doge, Bonk. There's been a heap of coins that have been taking off. It just hasn't been the entire asset class. And Ethereum's really is continuing to bleed as well, which is assisting this dominance to sort of hang up there too. All right, we'll jump into Ethereum. We'll go through the list from largest cap to smallest cap. So for Ethereum, it's just sort of chilling out up here. It had a really nice push through these 50% levels, and it got rejected off 3,400, which was a horizontal that I've had there for quite some time. Maybe it's coincidence, but yeah, clearly a key level that it's rejected off. I actually don't mind that it's sort of just chilling out here, doing a bit of consolidation after it did have this long period of straight up. The alternative to just consolidating and sort of moving sideways is to retrace. And we either go sideways for longer or we retrace deeper quickly. So given those two odds, I'd probably prefer to do just a bit of sideways, let it consolidate. People are going to be taking profits off that move for sure. The big thing is to be holding this 50% level and then start to push on up at some point. So against USDT, it's looking okay. It is a bit of a lackluster to see Bitcoin pumping and Ethereum not so much, but that's just the way the cookie's crumbling at the moment. I wouldn't mind to see a bit of a back test of this 2,900 level, and we'd want to see a bit of a V shape because this 2,900 is quite important. Not 2,900 exactly, it's probably 2,800 more so, but that was where the resistance was coming in, and it hasn't really been back tested yet. So it would be nice to see a bit of consolidation, a bounce down to test that resistance to see if it's been flipped to support before it's then moving on. So yeah, I think in the short term there is probably some downside still for Ethereum, but it's not a bad thing really. It's bad if we see Ethereum fall back below 2,800 and into this trading range. That's not what we want to see. Seeing a test is good. Seeing a fail and trade below is not good. The FBTC chart, it's hard to look at, but it's been getting smashed. This was a decent fake out here. Got back above these highs, but it only lasted a day before it started to sell off again. And even on the first day, it had fallen back into this range. So that's a fake out. When we get above these levels, we want to see multiple daily closes, ideally at least 3, and that starts to confirm that it's a genuine move. But we only got the one before it sell off ensued, and it went straight into a low. Little bit of a pity bounce here, but it's just continued down. So it is coming into the 786 at around that 33.1%, or 31.70. So the low's got to come in at some point. The 786 sounds like a good one to me, but we'll see where it comes. It's got to be soon. It has to be soon. If it starts, Ethereum's going to really, really, really struggle, I think. And it's interesting that there was so much bullishness around when it got its ETF, and it just goes to show that maybe you don't want an ETF. Sell the news. So we got the ETF in, I think it was around May, perhaps. Yeah, it was around here. Massive pump to celebrate the ETF, and then it's done dog shit since. Absolute dog shit since. And even against, we'll have a look at USDT. Yeah, look at that. That's the ETF, and dog shit since. This looks a lot better than against Bitcoin. You also have this pump over here where it sort of comes back up, but it's that's a clear sell the news event. Except this one's lasted a lot longer than the Bitcoin sell the news event. Get into Solana, I believe, is next. So Solana's doing really good. Quite impressed with how it's been moving. So we're getting higher highs. You can see the general movement coming back down, and this trend line here is a little bit of a concern how it keeps sort of falling back below after breaking out. I want to see it hold this trend line. Doesn't have to, I suppose, because it's still putting in higher lows, and it can even come back below these lows here. I would say that they're important, but they're not super important. The big thing is maintaining this channel for me. We don't want to see it break below this channel. But overall, I would say it's one of the stronger alts. That's for sure. To the upside, I want to see it starting to claim some of these highs over here. And that'll start freeing it up to spread its wings a little bit. So then we really only have this little bit of resistance over here on the left. And that's only from this current cycle. I'm pretty sure there is some, yeah. So we do have some resistance from the last cycle. I'd be honest, I'd be surprised if we saw Solana make a new all-time high against Bitcoin. That's going to take a lot of a massive upswing against Bitcoin to get there. Essentially, you'd need Solana to be at around 480, 500 bucks right now against Bitcoin's price of 94k to get above this high over here. So from a realistic perspective, I don't think it's attainable. Um, but anything can happen. Once Biddy starts getting up to that 120, 130, we'll probably see Solana move, but that also then does move the goalpost a little bit. It may mean that Solana's got to get to that $700-800 level to get over this point. Whilst it is strong, do I think there's going to be a $700 or $800 Solana? No, I don't. It's strong, but getting up there, that's pretty serious. That's going to be $700-800 Solana. That's at least a $300 billion market cap, which is pretty huge for an alt. Against USDT, we obviously had the breakout, which is great to see. So we're in cycle highs. Actually, no, I don't think that's an all-time high. Yeah, we're in cycle highs. As it broke out, it did some trading here, which is good because that's immediately confirming that the prior cycle high has been flipped to support before it's taken off again. So coming to the downside, we can see Solana pulling back, and we probably don't want to see it get too much lower than $220. It can wick down below, but we don't want to see any daily closes below that sort of level. That would just mean that the trend sort of changing for a short period of time. But it also, once it starts getting back below these levels, it makes it hard to then push on past them again. It's not to say it won't. It just takes a bit more time, and it can get a bit caught in a bit of range trading at the moment. We're in sort of, if you will, discovery for this cycle. I know that the all-time highs sitting in this period here, I can't remember it exactly. It's between 250, 260 from memory. So the all-time high really isn't far away before it then can just start moving on up again. But from my perspective, this is looking quite strong. We've got the inverse head and shoulders, which played out, and it tested the breakout line for support and then shot up. So this was definitely came true and has played out. So that's looking really good, I think. I know that there's a couple of you in Solana, so I hope you're enjoying these moves. To the upside, I haven't got it drawn out here at the moment, but there is, I think it's around $308. There's a key level that's just using like fib extensions, and then the ultimate target is probably going to be just above 400, between that 4 and 420. I don't think it's going to get too much higher than that, but it is hard to tell with alts because they can go to ridiculous prices that you just don't expect. And to get up there is a huge move. Like at the moment, if Solana moves 10%, that puts it at 255. That's going to add about $9 billion to its market cap. So I think Near's only sitting at around $6 or $6.5 billion at the moment. So it's adding an entire ecosystem's market cap to its market cap in a 10% move with change. So yeah, that's pretty crazy, I think. G'day, Hunter. If there's anything that you'd like me to look at, mate, just chuck it up in the chat for you. All right, we'll move on to Near. Near's next. Then we've got ORDI and Sweat last. All right, so I've been focusing on Near a little bit. A little bit disappointed, but it's still okay. The world isn't ending yet. We do have this sort of decent move, and then we've got 2 days that have just been not the greatest. Against Bitcoin, as you can see, as I was moving my cursor, we've got, maybe I'll draw it, might be a bit easier. Sort of goes like that. So we can wick below this point. We don't want to close below this point. We close below this point, then we're going to continue down. Whereas we hold this low, can still definitely go down because it's not a favorable sell off what we've seen, and it has broken some trend lines and sort of diagonal support levels that I had drawn. But if we hold that low, it still leaves the door open that we can continue this move up, and we're not going to be going into some corrective waves with a bit more downside. So that's what I'm going to be watching, is getting closes below this point here. There's quite a few alts that are in this sort of situation. The almost the deal breaker, I suppose, for me is if we were to get 3 daily closes below this bottom trend line, which is the bottom of the falling wedge. So do not want to get daily closes below this point. That's what I'm going to be watching for. There's still a fair bit of room to get down there. It's got to drop 20% against Bitcoin's standing still for it to get down to these levels. So that's a pretty big ask. It would mean that Bitcoin dominance is going to have to break up and out of its rising wedge to the upside for that to happen. So I don't think it's going to happen, but you just never know in this space. Yeah, just watching it carefully. We'll jump into the USDT chart. So we had a pretty solid couple weeks there, about 2 weeks, give or take. And we can see we go 1, 2, 3. I don't really like it, to be honest. Reason being is wave 1 is quite long, and wave 3 is quite short, which is not normal. So perhaps it needs to be looked at a little bit differently. Yeah. Okay. So I think I might have posted this up actually. So we've got 1, 2, 1, 2, which is the same as how Bitcoin played out. Now we're into that wave 3, which is longer than either of the wave 1s. Ideally, this wave 3 is longer, but we are having a little bit of a pullback, which isn't a bad thing. We did have a couple days down over here. The most important thing is that we don't get another two red days. I think having 2 is enough. We want to see this starting to bounce a little bit. I have drawn a fib earlier today. Staying above $5 is pretty important. It's going to keep it in the strong area. If we do get a wick down to that $4.60, we can deal with it, provided that it has a really nice recovery back up above $5. If it hangs below $5 after getting down to $4.60, then we're going to see a bit more downside. As we've seen, and this isn't just near specific, we see it in a lot of the charts. When we see a token that goes up to the golden pocket and then retraces but holds above the 50%, it typically pushes through. If it goes to the golden pocket, pulls back below the 50%, and then goes for a retest, it typically fails. And that works inversely as well. So this zone here is what I'm watching. We also have these lows over here that we don't want to get closes below. We're just coming in to test the tops, so we can definitely see some support come in at this $5.40. Just this candle does look quite bearish, and we have broken this trend line, which probably looks a bit better on the hourly, to be honest. So it's a pretty clean trend line. You can see it's got lots of touches, not even a wick through until it sort of breaks down. And it tried to get back above, but got rejected. And then that 50% level has held as resistance. You can see it's tried to get back above, but then it started failing to the downside. and this may be all that it needs before it does start picking up. And this is that structure on that daily candle that I was talking about. We're starting to come into it now. Again, don't want to get below these lows here. We don't want closing daily candles below these lows. So something that I'm keeping an eye on for now. Oh, we're moving up again. Big old biddy. That's all right. What else have we got? ORDI and sweat. We'll jump into ORDI first. Jeez, I went a bit crazy here last time, didn't I? Let's try clean this up a little bit. Oops, wrong one. Undo. It looks like it's just doing a bit of ranging. It tried to have a bit of a breakout of these tops, which I'd marked last time by the look of it. But it was a fake out because it came straight back into the range the next day, and now it's coming to the downside. I suspect it's going to want to try test this lower at around $30. As long as it doesn't get these daily closes below these lows over here, I think it's still okay. Draw a fib, see what that looks like. Yeah. So it's a bit ordinary looking at this. The reason why I say it's ordinary is we've got these daily candles here that have got no wicks to the bottom side, and you can get wicks down to grab the liquidity, and it snaps back. What I look for in those situations is when you have a fib that will be below this wick, and that sort of gives you confluence to. So we'll say, hypothetically speaking, we go like this. So if I was able to draw the fib like that, which I'm not, you could hypothetically say, okay, we've got these candles here, the two green ones that don't have a wick to the downside, and then we've got the 786, which is just below them. So perhaps it's going to go like this. Take the liquidity from below these two candles, and you've got the confluence of the 786, which will give you a nice bounce zone. We don't really have that as an option here. So it's every chance that it's going to perhaps wick below both of these. The problem that you've got is that you don't have another confluence to say, okay, it can do that, and it has a strong probability of bouncing off this fib level. So that's something that would have a little bit of concern for me. But in saying that, it hasn't broken below this point just yet. So for now, it does have a higher high, and it is looking to make a higher low. It doesn't have to put wicks below those candles, but a lot of the time it does. It's a bit like the CME gap. They don't have to be filled, but a lot of the time they do get filled. So it's just something that you need to consider if you're looking to add a little bit more to your bag, and you're unsure of where you want to get in, but you also don't mind if you don't add to your bag. I'd be definitely having some orders down in this zone, just below these candles, and then you use that martingale strategy, because there is a good chance that if it does come down to chuck a wick below to grab the liquidity, but below these two green candles, it's going to sweep this double bottom play over here. So you could go from about that $30 down to 27, or where's a low over here? Yeah, 25.73. So you could even just go to around that $26, have a bit of a martingale strategy about it. if you're looking to get some more ORDI. But the critical point for ordinals is to hold $20. That's the major low that we don't want to see broken. If we do start seeing that broken, then downtrends coming in, and ORDIs for me would be considered a poor investment choice. But it's got a lot of it's got a lot of fresh air before it starts getting down to that point. And I honestly don't think it's at risk at this point in time. We'll check ORDIs against Bitcoin. Yeah, this chart doesn't look too great, and it's actually playing out similar to what I had drawn last time. Because it got, and I've got a lot of scribble on this. I've got to start cleaning these up as we go through, I think. So what I don't like here is it's broken below this low, and it's actually making fresh lows at the moment. So that's just showing some weakness here for ORDI. It's going to have, if it does turn up, it's got basically its entire cycle as resistance. I know it starts off here, but that's when it launched, so you can't include that necessarily. Perhaps you can include this trading range back here when looking at structure. But this it's not great, particularly that it's broken this low. All right, now we'll jump into sweat. With sweat, I'll start with the BTC chart. So sweat BTC chart, much like ORDI's, is quite poor. It's making new lows. It actually made a new low in the past 24 hours, and it has it's had a bit of a bounce. Don't get me wrong, but it's now trading below prior structure. We thought that this was a bit of an accumulation, or could be an accumulation. Turns out it's actually distribution because we've got new lows again. What we want to see for sweat is getting back into, for a starting point, its first task is to get back into this trading range. And then the next point is to start getting on top of these highs. And once we've got on top of those highs, then sweat can start looking at getting on top of the 2023 low, which is here at 1,500. So against Bitcoin, it's got a shitload of work to do. Against BTC, not looking great. Just not looking great at all. Making new lows consistently and failing to produce any higher highs of relevance. Really, there has been one, one, but it's just a wick. It's not even a closing candle. It's just a wick above, and then it snapped back straight away. This gave a little bit of optimism because it didn't break back below these highs. But then the first sign that things could be starting to go pear-shaped was how it failed to get back above this point here and started selling off again. And that has just led into new lows. So to see it bounce now, it's not unusual. It's just a matter of where's it going to go? Is it going to reject off the entire distribution range? I suspect probably. But if it does get back into it, that's the first step in the right direction. Against USD, this chart obviously looks a little bit better. It just gets stuck in a range. It gets up to, above this 0.0085. It gets above this line, and then sellers just step in. It might spend a day at most above this line, and it just gets sold off. It won't be ranging forever. It will move up, but at what expense is Bitcoin going to move 20%? So it can move 10% or 15% or something like that. That's sort of what has been happening. And then when you get a bit of sideways, it sort of sells off a bit and loses that value. I do think with the TGE um, unlocks coming to an end, or some of them at least, that's going to alleviate some of that inflationary pressure. But majority of the inflationary pressure is coming from the consistent unlocks from the from the vesting schedule, not necessarily from retail. A lot of those investors getting in at around that 7 cent mark, they're going to be looking at this, and I'm not trying to shit can sweat, but just looking at this purely from an investor's perspective. They got in this over 2 years ago, maybe even longer, 3 years ago. I think they got in at 0.7 of a cent. I've got a feeling that was the seed round dollar value, and in 2 or 3 years, it's barely made any progress price wise. Which for people that are used to traditional finance, that might be an expectation. But in crypto, these VCs and private round sales, when they get into something, they're expecting it to be 10, 20, 100, 1000x from what their initial entry is. And that happens so often. It's just the norm. So for them to get in and they're like, what the hell? What's going on? My tokens are up 10, 15%, 20% in 3 years. This isn't right. And potentially they may be looking to unload their bags a bit, which is what's been suppressing the price. So I don't think it's necessarily people that get rewarded from. I don't think they can produce the amount of sweat to sustain this the markdown in price for sweat. I think it's more the investors, and they'll run out of tokens at some point. But the not so great thing is that they're getting linear unlocks until I think it's 2026. By which point I think this cycle is going to be well and truly over. So maybe sweat will go better in the next cycle to come. I wish there was an option to be able to invest in Sweatco directly, which I have asked about, but I was not provided any answers on. Alrighty, we'll take a look at the Dixie now. Let's take a quick look at prices. Yeah, not going on. They're going all right. So Dixie broke out of my parallel channel, which I believe I've since deleted because it is now invalid, and broke these tops as well, which were not the major key level, but they were definitely important levels. The major level was this one at 107, which it has struggled to get above. Well, it hasn't got above, but there's still time for it to get above. And if this is anything to go by, the trend is your friend until it ends, and the trend is up for at least the last, was it 2 months? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8 weeks. The fact that we weren't able to make a new high in the past week is promising. I do like that. That is a bit of a signal that potentially we could be starting to turn over. We do know that once you start getting above 7 weeks, or 7 candles in a single direction, it is starting to get a bit overextended, and we should be looking for reversals. So I think we are getting to that point, and this is it's a super critical level, not just cryptos or just looking at a chart, but just for the entire land cycle. It's unusual. It would be unusual to see the US dollar climb much higher than that. I think climbing from down here is more than enough, and probably unexpected as it is, for it to go even higher again would be very different. Um, so yeah, I'm. This is probably the chart that I'm most keen to keep an eye on at the moment, just because it is at such an important level. If it was to get above that 107, then it's gonna. There's a lot of fresh air up here. There's not a lot of structure because it was pretty much a V shape. Um, so yeah, if it was to get up, I'm purely going to be really just looking at these fibs to see where some resistance can come in. It's definitely, you can never say never, but geez, I've chucked my left nut on this high here not being broken um, in this land cycle, and I'm really waiting for this breakdown. I think this breakdown is going to be pretty large, pretty big when it does come. So at the moment, range trading, we can pretend that the 0 and the 50% are horizontal lines, and that's where it's ranging. So expecting this to start to turn over in the next week or so. Now moving over to the euro, it looks extremely similar. It's just more inverse than the Dixie. Broken some key levels, and that's sort of again inverse to what the Dixie's doing, where we break this trend line, broke below these lows. Um, this one here is probably the more important than this low over here, because we're going up, we come down, and then we go up to make the higher high. So that's the high low, and we break below that. This one's the major level, which is inverse to the Dixie and its important level at 107. So I'm suspecting that this is going to hold. But again, it's had multi weeks to the downside. So you got to assume that the downside's going to continue. And, if I was to be taking a long, I'd be definitely looking to long in this zone, and validation is below the low. And if it continues, it continues. But we can just use this data to give ourselves an edge. All right, Aussie dollar. Aussie dollar is looking stronger than the euro in the short term. By short term, I mean the last 12 months. Um, it's holding its structure a lot better, producing higher lows and higher highs. But where it's weaker is that it hasn't had that big spring out of the low. So it's within sort of 6%, 7% of its low over here, whereas the euro is it's sitting over 10% from the low, and you can see it looks a lot stronger in this bounce out before it started ranging. But the Aussie dollar doesn't get it's not as volatile against the US dollar. We're only a small nation in comparison, um, and that typically from my memory, it's trading between the 70 to 80 cent, 85 cent realm is fairly standard for the Aussie dollar. That's why I've been looking to offload some of my smaller bags, and even a little bit of Bitcoin if it can get to 96.5 in the next couple of days. Hopefully it does. Just because if the Aussie dollar does go on a rally against the US dollar, I need Bitcoin to move up by that same margin just to stay square. So I'm happy to take some profit off the table. If I was just going to leave my cash in US dollars, I wouldn't be selling. I'd be just holding for now. But the fact that I think US dollar is going to tank a bit, and the Aussie dollar is going to rally, I'm happy to sort of take that risk at the moment. And my downside is 5%, 6%. So that's where things are at, guys. seeing Bitcoin dominance pull back a little bit now, which is good. There any questions before I get on to what the how this event's going to work for December? Oh, all right. So I did post yesterday, last night, um, that we're going to have two events essentially. The nearest to the pin, which is what we have been doing the past couple of months, where we all pick where we think the low for Bitcoin's going to be for that month. Um, I'll need we'll need to post up our predictions prior to the 1st of December. Submissions close at midnight on November 30th. And whatever the low is for January, for December, whoever's the closest, the winner will get 3K sweat. You got to be closer than me. So I think this month, Belgian, you're the closest. I doubt anybody's going to take that from you, but we'll just let the months run out just in case. And then moving on to, I want to give you guys each a chance to win 2,000 sweat. How we're going to do this is you've got options. So you get to pick the token that you want, and you can either pick the value that you think it's going to be on Christmas Day, and get me to select whether the price is going to be above that value or below. And if I get it right, you lose. Or you pick the token, I'll pick the price, and you can pick higher or lower. And if you get it right, then you win. So I'll write it all down so it's a bit more clear and you got something to sort of reference. But I thought it'd just be something a little bit fun. Each of you have the chance to win your 2,000 sweat. You can pick the same token as each other, different tokens. It doesn't really matter. The only thing I ask is that you don't pick stable coins, for obvious reasons. So yeah, it's just something a little bit of fun and my way of sort of celebrating the upcoming festive season, birth of my son, and just to give a little bit back to you guys and keep things, fun and interesting. So clear as mud, Baldrick. If I win, can I get a middle name instead? You can get the middle name, but you'll have to change yours. That's how you'll get it, mate. Yeah, I could start, but I don't think I will. Sorry, mate. All right. Um, with that, I suppose that's probably sees us out for today. Just want to thank you guys for supporting Down Under Trading and myself for the last, I don't know, well, we'll just say the last 12 months. Um, yeah, it's been great to have you guys on board. I hope you guys get a lot out of these sessions and out of premium, and that it widens your understanding of the investing world. Doesn't mean that you have to sort of copy what I do, but as long as you yourself are improving in your own knowledge, that's what the aim is here. So, as always, ask questions. There's no question is a bad question. They're all good questions, and yeah, I might try do some voice updates and stuff like that over the coming weeks. But I'll definitely be putting in my normal Discord updates. It'll just be can you state and text the challenge you described today, please? Yeah, 100% star. I'll be doing that. Yeah. Yeah, I will. Thanks, mate. I'm just gonna get a few things together and probably head there shortly. Either we pick a token and the price, he gets the title, or we let him pick a price. Yeah, that's exactly right, Baldrick. And that's for each individual. You all get to pick one each, and you all get to the potential to win 2,000 sweat each. But yeah, I'll chuck it up in an announcement. Um, I know it's probably getting late for some of you guys, so I'm gonna leave it there and say good night or good morning, good evening, wherever you may be in the world. Um, yeah, take care of yourself, guys, and I'll speak to you soon.